to start that recording. I have a post-it, but it never works. The second thing is today you'll be receiving an email where we'll be asking for some feedback about last week's speakers and how those went for you. So please keep an eye out for that. With those things being said, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce one of my favorite colleagues here at Runway, Maria Pienaar. Maria is a VC here in the Valley and works mostly with early stage startups. She has run firms both in Silicon Valley as well as in South Africa. Um, she previously worked at Cell C in Africa and helped launch the continent's first Wi-Fi calling system, and has also worked with the Finnish government helping early stage startups find their way to market. And if that sounds familiar, then that's very similar to what Italy is doing with you guys right now. So she has a lot of experience in all of this, and she'll be speaking with you today about how to pitch your company business to business. So Maria.
Thank you so much, Randy. And it's lovely to see everyone again. And it was such a privilege to meet some of you last week in some of the sessions. Let me just share my screen here. Give me a second. There we go. And let me put this in slideshow. So can everyone see my screen? Right, so today we are going to talk a bit more about the pitching your company to B2B customers, so it's corporates and any other partners. And I will drill a little bit more into a bit of a different approach, which is also the approach that we looked at when I was working at Finnode, which is the Finnish trade center. It's similar to the ITA. Um, so we're going to cover today about how to find the corporates or business customers and partners, then engaging with them, then how do you collaborate with them with POs and POCs that you will be doing, how do you define the metrics for success, and then how do you make decisions on moving forward. So let's go. Uh, Again, just a bit of background on myself, and thank you for the lovely introduction. So I sit on the investment committee for a fintech fund based out of New York called Unicorn Growth Capital, and there we're looking at predominantly early stage companies that's doing embedded finance in developing markets with a very strong focus on Africa at the moment. I have actually co-founded a corporate VC myself. I was a CIO leading up the whole technology team for that was at Cell C, which was a $1 billion+ um, mobile company carrier out in South Africa. Was part of a turnaround project there. And then I did various roles in business development for Vodafone, Lucent, Nokia, and also product management. I've launched over 30 products and services myself globally. I've also worked for a number of startups. There was a Finnish startup called Solid, which was early days in new database, real-time database technologies, and Nielsen, who's key on insights here in the US. I've done a lot around innovation strategy with a company called Immersion Lab. We were working with the global 100 customers or global 50 customers globally, taking them into different markets and really looking at how do you do innovation outside in, which is now also quite known as a model for open innovation. And then for the Finnish government, obviously did a lot of new models for US market entry and acceleration, and the model was actually deployed globally through the Finland Trade Center. So they helped establish in a spate of 6 years, 55 Finnish companies quite successfully in the US market, which was pretty much unheard of. So yeah, I basically have sat, I would say, in a number of different sides of the fence with regards to driving success from now funding all the way through to innovation and new ideas. And so that has enabled me to bring in quite a lot of different perspectives in how to approach different markets. But let's just do a bit of a check-in. If you wouldn't mind, just a couple of you, how many people are we online? 14. A couple of you just tell me how you are selling in the market today, and if you are selling in external markets today outside your home country. Who wants to?
I start.
Sure.
At this stage, we sell to educational players also out of our country, for example, in US National Geographic, for vertical projects. So for in the case of use of our platform. Instead, we want to, in the future, to focus on the software as a service model. And for this, we are creating pilot projects in Italy, also in Mexico and in Paraguay. We hope to convert these pilot projects in customers starting in 3-6 months time frame.
And have you got people in these markets that's helping to drive sales, or are you serving the market?
Yes, we serve the market from here, even if, for example, in the case of National Geographic, we have been the opportunity to know them because we won a prize that was brought by them. So we have had this kind of networking effect and more easiness in providing our service to that customer. Obviously, if you do not have this kind of networking effect created by an award, it's much more difficult to reach the market.
Thank you for that, Marco. And just one more question, what are some of the challenges that you have in growing in these markets further?
In our case, because our market nowadays is the education market, it is a lot fragmented. It's very hard to reach the decision maker. So it's fragmentation and slowness, the most critical part.
Okay, now that's good to know. Thanks. Who else want to share but some of your experiences with us?
If you want, if I can. Hi. We have been selling to Italian market for our B2C customers, so our clients that make reservations online for wine tastings, and 90% of the time we have been worked with Italian customers or Italian wineries for international clients visiting Italy. Now, over the last few months, we have been studying this internationalization process. So we're started to work with some clients in Portugal, Spain, Austria, but it's still going, I mean, not random, but we are trying to understand which are the countries that we want to focus most in the next few years.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you. And one more person, if you don't mind. Anyone who started selling more in the US as well? No. Right. All right. So
me, for example, sorry, the microphone was not working. I'm actually selling my products also in the US, Canada, and also America del South, or for example, Australia as well. So also having to do with all of these kind of things with, for example, shipping items abroad is so hard also for the different customs, for the different regulations, documents to be attached to the parcel and so on. So it's a very difficult challenge. to do it.
And Enrico, do you have some people in the markets where you're selling into that's also helping with customers there, or are you supporting everyone from Italy?
Everything is done from Italy,
Mhm.
because basically right now I don't have distributors. That's the main thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, everyone. That gives me a little bit more of a clearer idea of where everyone is. And so, yeah, I think the one thing, especially here in the US, but I know this is quite common in other markets as well, is customers don't want to be pitched. so, so if they don't want to hear a pitch, then the question is, how do you actually reach them, right? Sorry. So let's first look at the typical mistakes that I have seen when companies move into new markets, right? And again, we're talking about a B2B and B2B2C type companies here. I know where you have a strong product-led type company where the market actually demands the product, which is what a lot of the online type of products and services can do. It's a little easier. But for today's conversation, we're purely going to focus on B2B and B2B2C and how to start building those relationships with potential distribution channel partners or customers directly. So and again, when we look at this, these are just some aspects of also what I've seen out of experience and what you read a lot of articles about. And there is no one shoe size fits all, right? So take the information and also adapt it to how it will fit in with your specific model for your company. But the typical mistakes that I see a lot is people are just not spending enough time in a new market that they're growing and scaling to really understand that market landscape, right? They're not taking enough time to understand the customer problem and pain. And in a lot of cases, I've seen that they're prematurely setting up sales teams or generating leads before the company is even able to support this new sales demand. I have seen so many times, and I can remember now, this must be statistics of about 10 years ago, when a lot of companies come in and they get the cheapest commission-based salesperson for hire, thinking that that person will generate more sales for them in the market and especially in the US market. And I've literally seen company lose $2 million not gaining market traction over a period of 2 years following that approach, because again there's a lack of support of who is managing that salesperson and the sales leads. Other big challenge is also not understanding the cost to do business in the new market. Like anything else, when you have a growth strategy, you do need to understand what the cost is going to be, again, to provide the right support people, to support your sales in the market and your customers in the market. And simply just a lack of budget to grow the business in the market. And that's a lot of the time where funding comes in as well as a strategy. And feel free to also, as we go along, to ask any questions, okay? Right. So let's look at the different approaches to market entry. And again, I'm focusing specific on B2B and B2B2C type models. So obviously the first one is direct sales, where you hiring your own salespeople. The second one, which can be very lucrative for you coming into new market, is working through distributors or channel partners. And then obviously I have seen a lot of hybrid sales models as well. So, and again, depending on the company of your business that you are doing, you may have to follow a hybrid approach. Now, with direct sales, when you're looking into new market, there's obviously now a couple of ways on how you can approach it. So the first one is go through normal lead generation, to be able to get to the market and then have specific salespeople, whether it is cold calling or salespeople following up on leads, which may sit in a distributed environment virtually, or actually people going to knock on the doors. Now, obviously, through COVID, a lot of that activity shifted to virtual. And one of the things that I have seen as well is most of the potential customers here love to have initial Zoom sessions these days because it's just more productive. And then if that is successful, then obviously some new, basically meeting in person is the next thing that will happen. Channel distribution partner sales, obviously one of the key things there is remember that these channel partners, yes, they can take you into massive scale into your potential corporate customers, but channel partners, like anyone else, unless you drive your products through them, they are not just going to drive your products for you. Right. They have numerous products of other companies that they typically sell, and the salespeople that they have are going to sell the products that's easiest for them to make money. So again, when you bring in channel partner sales, you need someone who can help understand how to drive your specific products through them. And I have seen the fastest growth of companies who followed a hybrid sales approach, that they basically did a direct sales as well as focus quite strongly on hybrid sales. And I must say, from the Finnish companies that we helped establish here in the US successfully over a 6-year period, of which half of them have now exited quite successfully with M&As, and other half still growing strong. They followed a hybrid sales approach in order to help drive that scale. All right, so let's talk a little bit about a different approach. Coming back to the mistakes that we've seen people typically make. Now, this was an approach that we specifically used with the Finnish government when we looked at how to scale companies faster. Now, I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we wanted to change. And when you look at the Finnish trade agency, they have a number of offices. It's a very successful way of which governments can get involved in helping to grow and scale their companies and promote them internationally. But a lot of the challenges that we faced is, and for lack of a word, I would call that there was an expectation to just set up what we call, I would say, business tours, right? So you would find a lot of the companies coming out here to Silicon Valley specifically, or the US, and they would meet up with a whole lot of people in different events and basically have conversations, and not much would come from that. The other part that we saw some challenges with the Finnish model is what we wanted to change was that a lot of the government funding was focused on new research and development. So the companies were very good getting €2 million grants or 1 million euro grants to basically expand, to do more product development, but there was very little funding available with regards to the government funding that actually focused on actual go-to-market support. And one of the things that we then did was to say, okay, fine, let's use a certain portion of that we can now apply also to go-to-market support. So some of our first cohort where we tested this new approach with was to basically say the companies paid half and the government paid the other half. But that was a much more effective way of how we could then utilize some of the funding to help the companies also budget and understand the market. Then we didn't just go and come set up meetings with potential customers with these companies. So over a period of about 8 to 12 weeks, we worked quite closely with the companies, and the first thing we focused on is what does the market landscape look like. So in the US, and I can give you an example of a banking customer that I worked with, more focusing on banking. Just in the state of Florida is over 1,500 banks, right? So we had to target and say, we're going to go into a specific state first and talk to potential customers there. Which geographies in the US do you want to support? Because like Europe, it's not just, oh, we go in and we cover all the states here. Each state in its way is its own market with its own market dynamics. Identify who the key customers are that you are targeting. So who's the primary customer and who's the secondary customer, and really where are the opportunities, so with regards to the specific problem you focus on. So we pretty much from that drew up a very quick yes, burnout.
Thank you. A question. What do you mean with primary or secondary customer?
Yes, sure. So primary customer is your, I would say the most important customer, who's the one who's spending money to buy your product. So that is your key target. Your secondary customer could be someone like a distribution channel partner who helps you sell, or it is a company that basically is in that space that enable you to also get access to the customer who actually buys markets. So I would say your secondary customer in this specific example would be your distribution channel partners, right? Because they are both partners and customers themselves. I hope that clarifies. And I know with some marketplaces, companies with marketplaces, typically the end user may be the primary customer, right? But you may have other companies that support the services to those primary customers as well. So they may have two types of customers, both a business customer as well as a direct end user consumer as well. It really depends. And as I say, when we go through the mentoring sessions, we can talk about that further. But the key thing is, first of all, just get a rough map of this ecosystem, and there's tons of research that you have available in the market that you can actually use. And in this case, we will list, and I will show an example of what this ecosystem looks like. You just list all possible players that you think are important for you to talk to. And so again, it's your primary customers as well as how do you get to them, which may be your distribution channel partners, like. And list also everyone that contributes to what is needed to grow your business in the market. So that you want to have interviews with. So are these regulatory? So is this legal? Is there certain financial things with regards to taxes? Is there certain ways that you need to structure your organization here to make it easier for customers to buy your products and services? And then from there, we then used to set up 10 initial interviews with potential customers and partners to first focus, test the problem you are solving, if that is a burning problem for the customer. So in that first conversation, we didn't even talk about the product that you have in most ways, apart from when the customers asked, how do you solve the problem, right? Is there a product market fit with this customer? And what is the urgency for them to find a solution in what your product falls? And this is actually one of the most important things, is what this does, it first of all helps you understand the situation the customers are in, how quickly you can help solve that problem, if there's any changes that you need to make to your product and service, which is working a little bit different on how customers use it here in the US versus what it would be back in your main country. And then after the first 10, you just refine the message and test it again, right? So do maybe 2 iterations of that. Now, the key thing that is so important here, and just to give you a little bit of a different approach, remember with the direct sales, we spoke about companies can lose $2 million hiring a salesperson. In 6 months, that person doesn't work out. Hire the next person. That person doesn't work out, and you do not get the market traction. With this, you spend a little bit of money up front, and typical budgets that I've seen for this type of exercise these days vary about between $80,000 to $150,000. Also, applying some local business development expertise who can help open the doors is key to do. Now, that immediately gives you low-hanging fruit understanding of where you can get into the market. What I have seen with some of the Finnish companies we followed this approach with, after the first initial conversation, some of them immediately got a potential for a $2 million contract on the table. Yes, Bernard.
Yeah, thanks. So low-hanging fruit, what is?
So low-hanging fruit is that yummy, delicious, quick opportunities, right? And thank you for asking clarification, because I know this is we have different languages as well that we come from. So it's that first juicy. These customers are so excited about it when you talk about them, that those are the initial targets that you will go to, because that's where you can make money the quickest. Right, and then obviously other customers will build a lot more time, will take a bit more time to build up on how to reach those customers, because your first opportunity is really, where is the fastest way for me to access the customers and to start making money in the market, right? So then draw up that map, and as I say, coming back to some of the Finnish approaches again, what we have seen is, as I say, with some of the Finnish companies, after one initial conversation and a quick follow-up, a $2 million contract was on the table. Now, the sad thing about this one specific example is they got so scared that they didn't know how they can service this $2 million opportunity, and they never followed up. In the US, the key thing that you want to do is follow up quickly. In the US, most of your business customers want to see a response within 48 hours, or at least just a response to say, hey, I need more time to get back to you, but you've got to follow up quickly. Randy, I'm also just going to ask you to monitor the chat for me. Right. To see if there's other questions, if you don't mind, because it's hard to see the screen and everyone on. Right. So, hang on, there we go. What's happening now? So let's just look at what a market opportunity map looks like. And I'm just going to also add on my annotate here. So the first thing you want to do is obviously understand who this customer is, right? And as I say, who's your customer who will be the main one buying your products, and who's the secondary customers that will be buying the second. You want to determine what we call, what is your minimal viable product for this market you are entering with, right? And so you are going to test in the conversation with these customers, basically what your initial products are and the feedback that they're getting of the problem you're solving. So in the customer block, you're going to list all the different types of customers and companies and come up with a list of maybe 20 that you would like to target, right? Then obviously there's a number of ways to get to them. So the first one is your direct sales and marketing. And through all these channels, the thing you are going to test in setting up these conversations is basically, what is the key value proposition you have for the customer, and is your value proposition working? Right. So you will list basically how you would approach with your marketing message. You will list potential distribution channel partners or key partners that can help you get to the customer and also service the customer for you. And then you have obviously any other distribution channel. So you just list here as many companies names that you would like to talk to that you're going to test with, right? So this helps you understand who are the customers, how do you get to the customers. The one part that a lot of companies miss is the support side, right? So as I say, it's fine that you can service an initial part of the market from Italy, but as you start growing your revenues in this market, what is it that you need? Do customers want a local US entity through which you should bill because it makes it easier for them from invoicing and taxes perspective? So in that case, when you do this market opportunity map, it is quite key to talk to accountants. If you have specific IP that you have registered, just to have an overview with some US IP lawyers, if it's not already registered or provisionally patents done. And the other key thing is important is visas. If you're going to start sending some of your staff over to support the market here, understand what visas they require. So speak to some immigration lawyers here in what are the key visas that's required and how long will that take, right? Because you've got to be very careful if you send support staff over with regards to flying them out here, sending them back, flying them out, sending them back, that you do not breach the rules of having them stay too long because they can be deported. And then basically from a staffing perspective, what are the key startup, and this is basically how do you start in the market, resources that you would need. Now, if you are supporting the majority of the market from Italy to start with, are you ramping up resources in Italy to help support the customers and the sales process here, right? Are you going to need some initial office space, right? Is there specific HR things that you require because you will be hiring Americans? Yes, Marco.
I have a question also related to your example with the Finnish companies.
Yes.
Regarding B2B companies, what is the minimum set of people based in US that you have to think to have in the first year, second year, provided that the development team remains in the native country, so in Italy? So what is the minimum set of people that you need for 1 year? And
yes, and I can tell you what the typical model was that worked well, and again, that really came out from doing this exercise, and that's why I say it's so important to set aside 3 months to understand this, right? So typically when they started opening up the market here, they had a business development person coming out from the office, because one of the things you do want your DNA and culture of the company also to become a part of your company for whoever you set up here, right? And then in most cases, because they were software companies, there was one sales engineer that joined the team here. So it was 2 people, and then eventually, as they start gaining an understanding, then they would start hiring a local person who heads up sales and marketing. But it was typically these 2 to 3 people with which they started, and a key part of why a business development person is good to send out and then to work with a local US person who understands the market. You start cross-pollinating the knowledge of how to access customers. But those 3 people were the start of most of the offices here. And as I say, they would focus very much on the first target market, state where most of their customers are. In a lot of cases, the companies came over here to Silicon Valley, but we had companies whose markets were first in Texas. Some of them were more in manufacturing or on the East Coast to start with there. So depending on where most of the customers are, they'll put the people there first and start headquarters. And yeah, there's also a debate around, do I need to shift my headquarters to the US or not? No, it's not necessary. A lot of Finnish companies had their headquarters still in Finland and started growing and scaling in the US, and some of them eventually, because of their funding requirements, then moved the headquarters to the US. But if you do it progressively, and as I say, that's why it's so important to understand this picture first before you really pull the trigger en masse. This just helps you save a lot of cost. Yes, it costs a little bit more upfront, but it saves a lot of cost in the end. But that was the typical part that they have. Now, there's a lot of companies for payroll and accounting that are outsourced services that you can use here in the US, especially if once you start ramping up the local US team. But you do have to understand, and that's why I say your legal and accountants are also important people to talk to, so you can just understand the dynamics of labor laws here in the US as well. Right.
Thank you.
So hopefully this, I'll just clear this picture. Hopefully this provides some information on how we then structured it in the approach. Right. So main benefits of following this approach versus, I would say, the more traditional way that we sell is you really gain a very quick, within 2 to 3 weeks, within 2 to 3 months, you get a very clear understanding of your market opportunity and how lucrative that may be, right? You understand the cost to service the market, both from a people and customer support perspective. You have a very clear understanding of your customer problem and how you are meeting that and how you're potentially competing with other competitors in the market. You understand which adaptations you may need to make to the product to service the market of the needs of the customers here, right? And that's why it's so important, if you have a technical product, is do send a sales engineering person that's got that strong link back into the engineering team in your home in Italy as well. And how to, that also help with prioritization of these features back at your with your development and engineering team. You will have a very clear plan on where to start first and where to focus and how you can scale sales in that specific areas. And also a very clear view on the resources that you need. So it's not just people resources, but any other accounting resources, any other legal resources that you need. So once you have a clear budget for this, then again you have a clear view on how you need to fund the effort to start growing and scaling in this specific environment. And it also falls back into prioritization of budgets from your overall financial plans as you scale, but it also adds in very clear data points when you need to look at talking to investors on how to grow in scale in that market. So right, now then the next thing is getting the meetings. And let's just have a quick conversation on, because this is getting harder, right, to talk to people initially. So let's just have a couple of comments here on what have you found is working for you to get that initial meeting, and what have you found doesn't work for you. Anyone?
Maria, just to understand better, what it does work in a specific time frame, or what it works because it works?
Yeah, I mean, so when you reach out to new prospect customers, say in the US, what have you found works for you to get the first meeting quickly?
For sure, in my case, if I am introduced by some locals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an introduction with another US person that is trusted by my potential customer, it is quite easier in that case. Otherwise, it is quite tough.
Yeah, and what makes it tough?
Many things, the distance, the language, the culture, the fact that you do not know when you speak with another person from another culture what is he or she thinking really. It's because you do not know anything, so it's like swimming in the ocean.
Yes, and obviously coming from a second language perspective, it's sometimes harder, right? So, but on the other hand, there's a huge advantage coming from a second language perspective. So, but it is hard to get the attention of these customers, and one of the areas that's also making it harder is phoning into customers, and I think COVID has caused a bigger problem there because hardly anyone is at the office for a set period of time. A lot of people don't forward their office phone numbers to their mobile phone, so they don't check their voicemails often. So you've got to start looking at email and LinkedIn specifically on how you can get to those customers, because even from people introducing you to customers, that's a very small limited set. At some point, you've got to say, okay, how do we directly get to talk to these customers? And again, once you've listed now the initial customers you want to test your company with, we will focus on those initial 10 meetings, right? So the key thing is, how do you find the right person? So spending time to really understand who you want to talk to at that customer company. So now we've got a list of 10 companies, right? Is understanding who is the buyer. And this is really where LinkedIn also can help you quite a lot, right? And you'll be surprised. I mean, I'm always stunned to see if I need to reach out to someone in a company that I'm either that I need to talk to, that most of the people are about second or third degree removed from me. Right. And that's why it is so important to build your network on LinkedIn vigorously. And when you connect with people on LinkedIn, it's not just sending a connect request. Always send a sentence or two of why you would like to connect with them. Now, one of the tricks I also use quite a lot is when I look at certain webinars and events where someone may be a speaker, I would just reach out to them directly after the event or even while I'm listening to the webinar and say, I loved your views on this specific points that you have made, and would you mind connecting with me, because I'd love to have a conversation. And you'll be surprised how many people then connect with you. Then it's important as well to just set up a quick 15-minute call with that person, or 20-minute call, just to understand what they do, and then basically how they how they addressing. So you're talking about the passion of the thing they just shared at that webinar and how they're addressing that specific problem, because that problem is also, by the way, related to the problem you're solving, right? And then they'll ask you, what do you do? Tell me more about your company. Hey, this is interesting. And sometimes they say, my goodness, you need to talk to this person. And then you can ask, please give me an introduction. But first of all, identify who that right person is, who will be the buyer, who's the one who's got the budget to pay for your service, right? Now, if it is a cold call, your teaser for the outreach is very important. And we will go through a bit of a teaser as well. The teaser these days is try and keep it to 300 characters. And the reason I'm saying 300 characters, because you can use LinkedIn very powerfully to connect to someone. And when you add a note, a personal note on why you want to connect, you can add that 300, you've got 300 characters there to use in the message to connect, right? So if your teaser fits in with the 300 characters, you can use LinkedIn, which is a more powerful way to connect to people versus sending emails out. And especially if you don't have the email numbers, yes, you've got tons of services in which you can find the emails as well. And sometimes, I just used to guess the email because it's either first name dot last name at the company name, or it's initial last name at the company name, or it is all together one word. There's just 5 iterations on what a person's email may or may not be, or it's first name at company name. So you can also guess the emails as well, but again, use approach both through LinkedIn and emails to just try and get them to respond. And why should they talk to you, right? Now, let's also talk about if you need to send any documentation out in that. And the response is no. You do not send any information out and PowerPoints or documentation or slide decks. So what do you think the reason is for that is? Anyone want to take a guess?
Yes, I believe it's a practical thing. If you don't see an interest, it's better don't send it.
Well, part of the reason is the more information you give them, the more you give them an opportunity to say this is not of interest. Right? So resist the urge of sending videos, links, and documentation in that initial teaser, right? So let's put this to practice. And I have you just sort of crafted a teaser based on your business, Bernard. So it's literally, and this is more than 300 characters, right? You can bring it down to, I think, this part, the initial paragraph, maybe the 300 characters, but it's literally, hey, John, I'm reaching out to you for an opportunity to have a 30-minute conversation on room sanitation, right? Or office space sanitation, whatever the word would be. And then basically, I'd love to understand some of your current challenges around this and also share some information on how we are solving common challenges we have seen with our customers in enabling them to sanitize live space in less than an hour at a fraction of the cost of existing solutions. So you immediately come up with some value of why he wants to talk to you, because he's got a problem, he wants to talk about their problem, and you have a potential solution, but you also want to talk to him about understanding the dynamics of the problem, right? Please let me know if you have availability next week, whatever dates and times, and then normally use the time zone that this person is in, right? So don't make it hard for them to figure out what time your time zone would be. So put in their specific time zone. So in this case, I assume that this person is in Europe, right? And if you are not the right person to talk to, would you mind connecting me to the right person? Right? And this is it. It's as simple as this. And as I say, this doesn't necessarily fit into the 300 characters, and we'll go through crafting it a little bit further. But the key thing is you want them to connect around the problem, not around your product. So you can see here I used very little with regards to any product statement. And as I say, if you use LinkedIn, obviously you have to reduce this to the 300 characters, right? So you can see it's very short and brief, and you'll be amazed how many people say, I'd love to talk to you, right? And again, if you've seen him in action at a conference, at a webinar, and that's why it's important to understand which events are happening, because a lot of the top speakers or panelists at those events will be your target market and say, hey, you know, I saw you at this event and loved your point you made about this. I would love to set up a call to have a conversation about some of the solutions you are seeing and also share some insights with regards to what I have seen in the market. When would you have, do you have time, this specific date and time to talk about this, right? Now, what I'd like us to do, we're 14 people, is do a bit of an exercise. And I don't know, Randy, what time, so how long, so we're 14 people.
You've got about 25 minutes left,
Yeah,
but we
so-
can fudge 5 minutes or so if you
yeah,
need
if
it.
we can do 5 minutes, because I just want to have a quick just exercise in trying to craft the 300 characters. So if we can do, 2 people per breakout room, just 5 minutes, because it should not take you more than 5 minutes to craft this. So can we, will that work? Or do we need 3 people in the breakout room?
That is a great question.
Yeah, I would say let's do 2 people. It's easier with 2 crafting a message, and you just test it with one another in 5 minutes. So shall we do that? Let's do 7 breakout rooms. And let's
I
just
am on it. Give me just 1 second.
and if we automatically assign, sorry, there's less, so we are 3, 1, 2, 3, so there's actually 11, right? Yeah, so it's 5 breakout rooms. And I will also hop in and out of the different breakout rooms. I'll just stop the share for here now for now. So what I want you guys to focus is in how you would frame the problem that you're looking at to gain the attention of someone. Is that clear? Right.
Maria, it will just take a minute for Randy to set those up.
Yeah.
I just did it.
Yeah.
The 3, you, Joyce, Maria, and I were, and Tommaso were not invited to rooms. Maria, so you know, room 5 has 3 people in it in
Yeah.
order to accommodate the odd number.
Wonderful. That's fine, and I'll just go and hop in and out of the different meeting rooms.
No worries.
Thank you.
Dennis, are you having trouble getting into your breakout?
You can just assign him.
I did assign him, but because of the odd number, I might move.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be with Bernard. Okay, there he goes.
There we go. Cool.
Right.
I just want to make sure Bernard had somebody with him so I could have moved the 3rd person there until Dennis got there, but we're good.
I'll be back.
Perfect. Have fun. Breakout rooms with no warning. Joyce.
Hi, Randy, Joyce.
Hi. We're still recording. I just need Joyce to meet me over on Slack for a second.
Okay.
Maria, we can't hear you. Maria doesn't work
Maria,
the
we can't hear you.
audio.
Sorry, I forgot that once I get back to main room, I'm on mute first. So yeah, this was hard, right? It's not easy to do, and a lot of you defaulted back to pitching your product versus reaching out to this customer around a problem. And as I say, we can definitely continue, reach out to me, and I can help you craft what that teaser would look like and work for you in your specific case. But yeah, that's the key thing is focus on the problem you're solving or the reason why these people would be interested in some of the challenges of why they would like to buy your specific product. Right, let me go back into sharing the screen. Okay, so well done everyone for attempting this. Right, so now we're in the meeting. Who here, just by raise of hands, understand the SPIN methodology? Or knows about it? I don't see any hands. All right, so now that we've gotten, the guy says, I'd love to have a 30-minute call with you. The first thing you're going to do is become an anthropologist. Now, you come from a place with wonderful anthropology and history. The key thing you want to do is not have yourself talk a lot about about your product. You want to listen to the customer's problem, right? So the first question you're going to ask is, what's the current situation that they have? You want to discover that, right? What's the problem they're solving in this current situation they are facing? And obviously this is around the type of problem you are looking at, right? What's the big implications? If they do not solve this, are they going to lose their jobs? If the company going to go bankrupt, what is that burning pain that will cause them to buy a product like yours? And then what is the need for a solution to fix the problem? So that is how soon is it that they may want to solve the problem, because sometimes they'll tell you, this is not really something we're focusing on, it's not a priority, then this is more for a future type of customer. This is then not the low-hanging fruit customer. But if it tells you, man, I need to solve this problem within the next month, then you have what we call a low-hanging fruit, right? And just some example questions. So as you go through that ecosystem map, basically set up specific questions, one for your specific questions for your partner and specific questions for your customer as well, right? To understand what it is, and write at least 10 questions down. Use open-ended questions. So these are things around why, how, what, where is this happening, and when are you expecting to get some solutions? What type of solutions have you been looking at? Why are these things not working? That prompts them to talk a lot about their burning pain. And remember, customers love to talk about their problems, right? So in this case, you like the doctor sitting there listening and identifying what the symptoms are, right? When you're talking about distributor partners, obviously key things you want to understand is what solutions they are selling today to solve this problem. What's the key problem that their customers are telling them? What is working or not working? And that's also a good question for your customer. How many products are they selling? What would make it easy to sell new products in that? So that helps you understand the type of marketing collateral, sales collateral you need, and what type of support do they need in order to make products more successful. So you want to understand budget life cycles. You want to understand, is their budget? You want to understand timelines, the friction points of how to get to these customers. And these are just, as I say, some samples, but for every single customer or partner you talk to, just understand, have a separate list of questions before you have the meeting. The key thing is to understand whether your problem would be a great solution for them, but first you need to understand their situation, right? And then if they are saying, okay, great, let's go ahead, and you've gotten to a point where they want to do a pilot, let's talk about POCs and collaboration. And here are some of the key areas where these things do not work out properly. So the first one is around that it's not necessarily a top priority for the key stakeholders. So have you identified the right executive sponsorship? And I've seen where POCs could be quite long. A couple of times the projects went down because the executive sponsor changed. So always make sure that you keep everyone an understanding of who all the different stakeholders are, right? There's a lack of clear success metrics. So it's, oh, well, it was a nice POC, but they don't have a real means on how it adds value to the company and how this can be taken forward. The POCs, and this is what I see a lot, are not turning into commercial agreements due to poor POC contracts. So normally it's like, oh, it's done and here's the success metrics, and no one ever thought to say, okay, if we meet these KPIs, how this now turns into a commercial agreement. And with some customers, you may need to go through a procurement or RFP process, but you will need to understand what that means. When it's technology projects, a lot of the time the POCs are not part of the normal workload of the IT team. So again, not getting it prioritized to do the initial integrations to make it successful can take a long time. And this is what I call the round hole in a square peg, or square peg in a round hole problem. You've got to make it easy for them to integrate it and not increase on the current workload that very busy business units have. And then also there's a limited strategic alignment. So when you think about your POCs, bear these things in mind in how you structure the success metrics. So talking about what will drive better success, your first task is understanding where the friction points are and how to remove this, right? So which are some of the challenges with people on their busy time schedules? How can you make it easier that it does not add a workload on them, extra workload on them? For integration into IT stacks, how do you make your system appear to and a system that's easy for them to work with, right? And in some cases, you may need to do a little bit development and build the adapter on your side, but make it easy for them to bring this in and test this, right? Sometimes when there are key challenges, there's with regards to some friction points, especially around some people, because some people may have different agendas and they could work against you. Understand who those are and have the conversations early on how, again, make their life easy and what value this will bring to their specific environment or job, right? So you've got to look at gaining interviews with all these different stakeholders to understand how you make this POC as easy as possible. Then a clear metrics of what success look like or not, right? Where are the yes-no decisions to move forward to the next step or not? How long does this POC last? Is it 3 months? Is it 4 months? Is it 6 months? Depending on what you're testing, right? It may be shorter. It may be faster. If you gain a certain point of adoption of this, whether it's internally or that customers, then is this where you say it's successful and then we convert it to a successful contract? So always look at the points where you can convert it. Now, I cannot stress enough that you've got to send out frequent communication and updates to all your key stakeholders. Keep them abreast. Identify who's the people who's excited about this product in the customer, and make sure those updates go out as you progress and bringing in the key things that they like about it, and talk about it as much as you can. You're the evangelist there. Right, Burnout?
Thanks, Maria. So please, can you explain better what are the POC agreements? Because I believe in Italy doesn't exist.
Yeah, so you do want to have, whether it's a memorandum of understanding or a type of, it's a framework for describing the scope of the POC. It's a framework of describing the success outcomes after what time. So it describes the timeline of when you want to implement this. And it also defines what the success outcomes look like. And then it is also an agreement, okay, if this is successful, right? So in your case, if they've now tested 3 devices or 10 devices in this one location, and you show how you can save time for them and make it easier, then it automatically converts into, say, a first-year agreement of X number of volumes to buy. But this is like a memorandum of understanding or a framework to say, this is what will make it successful, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this, if you are being paid POCs, what are the payment terms for that? Right.
It's a normal way in US, this.
It's a normal way in the US, it's a normal way in other countries I have seen, but you can make it a normal way, because if you have no agreement, this is just, okay, I'm testing a widget and I have no commitment. So agreement like this just helps frame, and it's like signing a scope of work. It helps frame the clear deliverables of what you are going to do and what the customer is going to do. And it just helps you project management, manage the project and the POC in much better ways. And it's just a good practice to put in place. Now, obviously, some customers may be resistant, but then you've got to have some agreement on how you would move forward, because otherwise you're wasting your time. Right.
Maria,
Yeah.
you're over time. I just wanted to
Sorry.
give you a few minutes if you
Yeah.
wanted to wrap up.
So
I didn't know
that-
how much you have left.
And that's why I say this is the last slide. So it's just key of make sure you cover all these things quite clearly with regards to where you are, how you're going to do these POCs, and what the yes/no decisions are to actually convert this POC into a commercial agreement. Right. So we're not going to do breakout rooms, but anyway, so link up with me, send me an email, connect with me if you have more questions and want to just go through crafting these statements. Happy to look at them, happy to work with you around those. That's why I'm here. But hopefully this helped give you a little bit of insights on getting into especially the US market in a way that I know have driven great results from the companies I have worked with.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So that is the